Barghani and Islam. Hetepu, once again, this is Chief Noble Bandele El Amin with another video. Basically, today's video will be dealing with the title is Masons, Moors, and Science. So, what I wanted to do in this video was discuss some of the connections between what we call Moorish Science and what is known today as Freemasonry. So when we look into this, we look into the origin of Freemasonry, you'll find that Freemasonry comes from Masonry. And the term Masonry is dealing with actually building monuments or building structures, buildings that are what is known as esoteric or sacred science, sacred geometry. These were things that were not known to everyone in ancient times. So there were certain people who would use the sciences of nature, the science of the universe as understood, and they would create buildings and structures based on those. So an example would be the pyramids. When you look at the pyramids, they're built with the foundation at certain angles. They got the 90-degree angles at four angles, which is 360 degrees, which is full circle of knowledge. But you have the precise of the pyramid, along with its alignment with certain, zodiacs or constellations. So it wasn't just built for commercial purpose, or it wasn't just something that wasn't really thought out. These things were thought out and were contracted out by master masons. So the term of master mason is very ancient when you look at its structures and what the structures were. You have them all over the world, from mounds to Stonehenge. You got pyramids in Africa, all throughout Africa, and all throughout the continents of the Americas. So that is really the foundation. And from that foundation, you have what we have today as Masonry, Freemasonry, which are speculative Masons. So what they have done is they've taken some of the sciences that come from your Masonry, which came through the guilds of medieval time, and then they took these things and made them secret sciences, secret societies, where these people now built the characters of humanity or the character of man versus building actual structures. The structure has become the human or the body or the temple of the body. But also, Masonry, what we know today, comes directly out of the mystery school of ancient Kemet. But not just ancient Kemet. I look at mystery schools from 4 different perspectives. We have Kush, or what you know today as Ethiopia or Abyssinia. But you have Kush, you have Kemet, Sumer, Canaan, and Nubia. To me, those are the 5 center points where civilization set up their mystery schools. And I also want to say, even with Kush, I want to also introduce the Hindu Kush or Hindu Kush, which was known now today as India. A lot of that science comes out of Kush. So we'll say not by honorable mention, but also as adding India or Hindu Kush to that mystery school system. So with these several type of mystery school systems that were set up in ancient times, you find that the people, even in the Bible or any other religious text, also convey that same thought. You know, when you look at the Bible and the Masonic teachings that are in the Bible, you'll find, like, for example, Abraham was out of, first of all, out of Ur, Chaldea, which is Sumerian. So he had a foundation of Sumerian understanding that that's where his homeland. And then he was called out, allegedly called out by God in the Bible and sent into Canaan. Now, Canaan is very important, which we'll look at in a few minutes. But Canaan is important because Canaan has its mystery system set up as well. And so you'll find Abraham somewhere in Genesis, he meets up with Melchizedek. And Melchizedek is important because Melchizedek is known as the king of Salem, which is the king of Salem, which ultimately translate into the king of peace. That's where you get the word assalamu alaikum, or when you hear shalom, or when you just hear Salem. Salem means peace. So Melchizedek was the king of peace. He was the ruler of Jerusalem, and he was also the priest of El Elyon, which is the priest of God Most High. So what makes that incredible is that anytime you look at any of the orders, a king and a priest are usually separated. So you usually have a king and you usually have a priest. So when he's coming and saying that he's king of both, that's a very powerful status that Melchizedek is formed. He said that he is born of no mother or father, and that even, later you'll find that Jesus falls in the order of Melchizedek. But not to get ahead, but also looking in the Bible, when you look at Moses or Moshe was ultimately initiated in the mysteries of Kemet as well, because we know that in the story he was found in the river and was raised by, they say Egyptian, but we say Kemetic, was raised by Kemetic hierarchy, basically in the Pharaoh's house. So he was raised in the Pharaoh house, getting the best education, was initiated into the mysteries. They don't say what type of mysteries though, what the Pharaoh was really understanding. They're also, even though at the time that Moses may have been around, you have to understand that the school or the mysteries of Aton, which is Aton. Aton was the great sun disk god, if you will, that was practiced by Akhenaten. Akhenaten or Akhenaten was, he's the one that changed the priesthood, he changed the mysteries, basically got rid of the traditional priesthood, where you had the schools of Osir and the schools of Aset. He basically turned away from that, began the mysteries of Aton, and set up his kingdom, or not kingdom, but set up the empire capital was changed from its previous place. So even though it's questionable when Moses was, but we know that he was around at least 100 years, give or take, in that same time that Akhenaten reigned. Now we know that Akhenaten did, after his reign, his son Tutankhamun, which we know as King Tut, he actually reestablished the old order. So shortly after Akhenaten's passing, or what we call westing, his westing, that his son shortly changed it back, but that did not mean that the priesthood of Akhenaten had died. And you can see that with the fact that Moses is to have brought this God to his Hebrew people. And that God was known as Yahweh or UNYB, but the letters that represent that is YHVH or YHWH, but that term meant I am. So when Jesus, or not Jesus, excuse me, but when Moses asked, in the burning bush scenario, where he asked, well, who are you? What should I call you? And the bush replied, I am that I am, or Yahweh. So in a sense, the bush or God was saying that I am. I don't have a name. The name is I am. I just am. I exist. I just be. So with that, Moses came with the YHVH, or what came out of that. Now, what's interesting about that those four letters, the YHVH, represents what they call the tetragrammaton. The tetragrammaton. And so through my study, I began to realize that tetra, when you break the word down, tetra being four, gram meaning letter, but what is aton? Tetragram Aitan, the four letters of Aitan, the four letters of God. So right there is letting me know that Moses had dealt in those secret sciences. Okay. Or what the figure in the story is. Now I'm not saying that Moses existed or not. That's a whole debate. But that title, or that those four letters actually represent the tetragrammaton. So then we got that. We look at Solomon's temple in the Bible. Solomon's temple was built by a Canaanite or a Phoenician builder called Hiram Abiff. Now what's important about Hiram Abiff is that Hiram is also the origin of the story of modern day Freemasonry. Every Freemason, whether they be Prince Hall or more orthodox, through the Blue Lodge, the lodges that way. No matter what, they know Hiram Abiff. Hiram Abiff is the master builder. He was to build Solomon's temple. He was killed by 3 ruffians and buried in a shallow grave. Now that shallow grave really is us. That shallow grave of a person really represents the fallen Moors who forgot who they were. Because the final blow of these ruffians, you had the 3 ruffians, and the last blow was a blow to the head. So that represents us, which we can get into at another time. But I just wanted to say that, after all these, you got Alexander the Great, who come and conquer basically all the mystery school systems except Nubia, which was fought off by a queen, by African queen, a Candace, they call them. But, looking at Prince Hall, also supposedly be born of a West African, so having Moorish ties. Richard Allen was a Prince Hall Mason, so a lot of Masons that were Prince Hall that are founders of a lot of what we have in African American history. But then you got Noble Drew Ali, which is the builder he built on the sciences. They say that he was a Shriner, or he was shrine orientated. That he saw the African origin of in this doctrine. founded the Canaanite temple in 1913, and that's important because he envisioned that Canaanites, Hamites, and Moabites were all Moors, and they were coming out of that ancient order of Melchizedek, which we talked about that Jesus followed into. So Masonry and Moorish science tie in, and I can't I want to get deeper, but for the sake of time, this is just a small segment. We'll get back to this in part 2. But until then, to all my people, Salama, Hetepu, Islam,